lovely. Right. Can't be a bit of Assam tea. Now, the very sad passing of Edward Sexton, who was one of the last proper tailors on Savile Row. I think I might have said something about him already, but really lovely guy, huge respect. I've never considered myself a tailor. I've always wanted to describe myself as a manufacturer. But I was lucky enough to know a lot of these guys in the early days in Savile Row. And it just reminded me of a conversation I had with Edward Sexton when he came into my shop in Chelsea. Just talking about early days. And I said, oh yeah, when I got started I had to do bloody canvassing all day, just putting the canvas on the inside of jackets, which is never seen. But it has to be sewn in perfect arcs, like that. And there's cross stitches that go on it, and the crosses have to line up to a point like that. And people come and check your work's okay. And I'm talking to Edward Sexton about this, you know, so what you all get started doing. So you're doing this canvassing, and he said, "Yeah, I did that." And I said, "Yeah, well, I said this guy one day came up and I'm canvassing, and he said, what do you think to what you've done?" And I said, "Well, seems okay." And he said, "Well, I think you ought to do it again." And I just said, "Oh, okay." And I started to unpick it. He said, "No, I'm only kidding." He said, "But that's how we tell if people are ever going to be any good at this. The ones that moan and say, oh, things look wrong to me," he said, "we know they're never going to be any good. The ones that say, yeah, okay, we know they're going to be all right." And as I said that, Edward Sexton said, Same thing happened to me." He said, "I've forgotten about it." He said, "Exactly the same thing happened to me." That must have been the way, the standardised tailoring textbook way of finding out if anybody's going to be any good. But of course, Edward Sexton associated with Tommy Nutter, sadly missed on Savile Row. But I remember a lot of the people in tailoring and in manufacturing, because I've always been involved with vintage, people like Ralph Lauren and Burberry and all these big companies would come along to vintage shops to get stuff for archive and for copying, or even just to check how a particular shoulder goes or something like that. They wouldn't necessarily copy the whole garment, they'd just little detail. And I remember I loaned this jacket, this velvet, 1930s velvet smoking jacket. Now, moths don't eat cotton, so the cotton velvet is absolutely fine, but silk can get attacked by just what's in it, just falls to pieces. And I've had this in my storeroom for a very long time now, intending to restore it, because the coat is fine, just needs to be refaced, which is going to be done entirely by hand. So I've got to get some nice dark green or black silk grosgrain and replace the lapels on this. But I loaned this to Tommy Nutter, and he kept it for about a year before he gave it me back. And of course he would make things like this. This is a Tommy Nutter smoking jacket, and this is almost exactly the same as this one. I just like to think that he might have used my model to create this particular jacket. The thing that Tommy Nutter would do is very interesting. See, he was a superb tailor. He wasn't just a rock and roll guy, he was a superb tailor. And he would do little, like, tailoring jokes, like on this jacket, it's got a drop shoulder. The shoulder seam doesn't go to the centre of the top, which is a modern way of doing things. Before the war, it would go down to the back so that you wouldn't see the seam if you were looking face on somebody. Because it's easier to do alterations if you do a seam across the top. That became the standard way to do it. But really good tailors and really old tailors might still do the drop shoulder. And if you're a young tailor, it's a bit showing off to do a drop shoulder. But sure enough, Tommy Nutter liked to show off a little bit, and we've got the drop shoulder on this one, even though this was made in the late, I think early 80s, this one. So yeah, Tommy Nutter, Edward Sexton, really heroes of Savile Row. Now, Tommy Nutter, if you haven't heard of him, maybe you should have. He was maybe the last most exciting thing to happen on Savile Row, because I think sooner or later maybe within my lifetime, Savile is just going to be a row of shops of Gucci, Ralph Lauren, etc. Tommy sadly died, and he did some mad, crazy stuff. Tweeds made up of all different sort of mismatching tweeds, and he made for lots of famous people like Bianca Jagger, the Stones, Elton John, yeah, you name it. But he also did business suits. He made really beautiful chalk striped suits for bankers and rich people. And although some of his stuff was a little bit mad, the tailoring was excellent and really first class. And when he died, some journalists went along and found the stuffiest old tailor they could find on Savile Row, hoping to get some sort of stuffy comment about these new people, And all the comments were, well, Tommy is actually sadly missed on Savile Row because he brought new life to the street. Now, this is made by Tommy, and it's quite beautiful. It's in a silk velvet, and it's an absolutely conventional gents smoking jacket in a Victorian kind of pattern, double breasted, all this frogging here. Sometimes have frogging on the sleeves too. He's got a duffel type button on the cuff, which is quite interesting. So absolutely conventional, quite straightforward. But he also did clever stuff like this. He wasn't afraid to mess around with lapels and pockets and do different stuff, but always used the best materials. And see, this was absolutely beautiful. Made for somebody a little bit slimmer than this mannequin, made for somebody about size 36, I suppose. And again, in beautiful silk velvet. And this is really typical Tommy Nutter. Now, in the glory days, people used to work in the back rooms of Savile Row, and not just in Savile Row, in Soho and in the city, you had fantastic tailors. One fantastic tailor was this guy. They made suits, and they were also shirt makers. Their name was Watson, and they were in Royal Exchange, I think it's called. This suit, it's mohair, it's stylish, it's made for a chap who's slightly portly, size 40 and slightly short, but this is just super tailoring, and I love, now this is a button that's quite often used in Savile Row. It's just a plain plastic button with quite narrow lip on it. You see it a lot it's favoured by a lot of Savile Row tailors, and somehow this guy's gone to the trouble of getting these smoke blue-grey buttons, sort of Morris Minor colour. And the quality of this suit, there's a lot of hand finishing on there, it's hand canvassed on the inside. It's absolutely super. Mohair, it's going to be really super cool. We're never ever going to see suits like this made again. Now it is possible to make a factory produced suit, and it is possible to buy good mohair, but there seems to be no willingness to do it. Everything's made to the lowest common denominator, use the cheapest materials. We're never going to see that kind of quality, those kind of guys ever again. People have often said to me, I remember a Japanese interview that I did over in Harajuku once, David, you never put a label, your brand in your clothes that you make. And I said, well, I just think it's rude. Why would anybody want to have my name in their clothes? And also, I really hope that people can recognize suits that I've made from the cut and the quality and not go searching around for a label. But there's one exception to this not having visible labels in Savile Row. And if you talk about Savile Row, then you've got to talk about Henry Poole. And they're, I think, pretty much the only tailor in what must be the top 5 tailors that stick a dirty great big label right in the middle of the coat like that. But I think it's Henry Poole, so he can set any rules he likes. Every tailor in the world owes a debt to Henry Poole for elevating them socially. The story goes that he was walking in Ratton Row or something, Hyde Park, and the king and a few of his buddies were walking along, and he said, "Oh, good morning, Mr. Poole." And the other sort of courtiers were, dukes and lackeys, were astonished that the king had spoken to a tradesman. It was quite not quite done. That particular greeting from the king did wonders for tailors. It elevated the social status, and tailors became front door tradesmen. The only other front door tradesman was the wine merchant would come to the front door, but the guy with the spuds and the coal would go around the back and deal with the housekeeper. But suddenly tailors were really elevated socially, and Henry Poole was, I think, maybe the first tailor to be in Savile Row. So Savile Row and the tradition of excellent tailoring was started by Henry Poole, and they turned out some bloody marvellous kit. I bought some suits from a chap who at the age of 20 inherited a Clyde shipyard, and he had dozens of suits made at Henry Poole, and all had printed silk linings, and the tailoring was absolutely superb. Yeah. If you draw up a league table of tailors, I suppose Huntsman, obviously, Henry Poole, like that, they're definitely top boys. Now, I want to chat about this jacket for a minute, but also I want to talk about this coat hanger. Now, this is a mystery to me. It's a fabulous bit of kit. It's an aluminium moulding. A lot of military uniforms beyond coat hangers with this little high-rise neck thing like this. It's made in 3 or 4 pieces. This is just a sort of bent steel thing, and it's bolted together. Now, I've been in this business an awful long time, and I've never seen one of these before. I came across one a couple of years ago, and the lady told me she had another 2. They were made in Sheffield, and I've never seen them before, but it's obviously something that was in production. It's got a patent on it and a Sheffield brand name. I was thinking of getting these things remade. It's just a beautiful bit of kit. Yeah, fabulous. Anyway, this fabulous wool evening coat. It's got a little bit of damage here, and I'm not sure how I'm going to go about repairing this. A darn is going to look a little bit obvious. I don't really want to redo the whole lapel like that, so I think it might just have to be getting some actual silk thread and try and just sort of flatten that down with some clever stitching. Yeah, we'll see. It's an ongoing project. This was made in, let's see, 1956. So this has got a bit of age to it. Yeah, yeah, a beautiful bit of kit. Not been worn very much at all, but oddly, it's got this little bit of wear on the neck. But I think it might have come from some damage rather than actual wear, because nothing's on this side. Yeah, absolutely beautiful tailoring.